This morning, we're going to hear about the art of listening from someone who has been a husband, a father, grandfather, physician, pastor, mentor, and healthcare executive. Quite a bit of experience there. We want to welcome Dr. Shadle back this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be back, and one of my favorite topics, listening. I've thought about it a lot. I've tried it a lot. Sometimes I fail. And, when we fail, at least when I fail, it's because I get judgmental. And I think I know what they need, and I don't want to listen. And so I want to talk about listening and look at the story of Jesus when he was in Samaria, and there was this well, and there was this woman that came, and see what we can learn from that story. But before I do that, let me just offer a word of prayer. Father, as we open your word and we consider this word, listen, I pray that we would listen to you even as I speak. I know that you speak to each one of us, and often we don't listen. May we learn from you today, I pray in your name, amen. What's this with the woman at the well? Let's just go through John chapter 4, verses 11 to 26. Here, the background, and we all know this here, but just to review for us, the background is that where he's going north, and the quickest way to get there is Samaria, through Samaria. But as we know here, the Jews hated the Samaritans, and the Samaritans hated the Jews. It would be like us going to the ghetto downtown. It'd be like going to Seattle around, in that. It's been a while since I've been there, but the last time I was there a couple of years ago, the homeless population had exploded, and my understanding is it's a lot worse today. And there's a couple streets you got to get through to get to Pike's Market, right? And so it's kind of uncomfortable for me. I kind of don't want to face that. I don't want panhandlers asking me for money, and I can't give them all money, and I don't know how to do this, and so I just kind of shut down. I don't like going there. There's a lot of places that I don't like to go, that I'm uncomfortable. Travel internationally a fair amount because we have partner hospitals around the world, and there are places in Nepal I'm just not real comfortable with. Rwanda, on the other hand, feels like the safest country in the world. I never feel unsafe in Rwanda. But there are places where I do, and when I feel unsafe, I'm probably not my best person. Right? And so, Jesus makes a decision that he wants to go to that place. He's going to go through Samaria. So that's a big decision right there that the disciples disagreed with. Let's take the walk. Let's go to Rwanda this trip, and let's not go to Nepal. You see, so Jesus is saying, well, no, this is the quickest way, and I think there might be some mission moments that we can learn from. So here he is, and he sees a woman. And I'm reading a book, because I am not good at small talk. I'm reading a book on small talk. So I get into it, I'm actually quite an introvert, and so when I go to a big conference, there might be 300 people there, and I get into the lobby area, it's like, how do I navigate this? Well, you navigate it with small talk, because small talk helps you get to more significant talk. And I realized some things in reading this book about myself that I need to address. It would help me to have those kind of conversations. Jesus starts with a question. Could you give me a drink of water? They're at the well. Could you give me a drink of water? It's noontime. She's not supposed to be there at noon as a woman. Jesus recognizes that she's there. He doesn't say, what are you doing here? He asks for a basic human need, which is to have water. He's putting her, when we ask a question like that, we're automatically putting them above us, in that they're the ones that's going to give us an answer. Someone that would actually give me help. That's the beautiful thing about, in the Adventist church, we do the foot washing along with the communion. Because what does foot washing do? When you wash somebody's feet, it's humbling. But it's more humbling to have somebody wash our feet. So, because we want to keep our hierarchy, we don't think of it that way, but, our position, and we don't, we just don't want to be served because we can do this ourselves. Jesus could have gotten that water, couldn't he? But he asked a question that immediately elevates her stature. And she says, aren't you a Jew? I'm a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me to get a drink? My goodness. We don't love each other. We don't agree with each other. And you're asking me to help you out? Wow. I would say she's attempting to avoid conversation, possibly. Like, I just came here to get some water for my family. So, Jesus says, if you knew the generosity of God and who I am, you would be asking me for a drink, and I would give you fresh, living water. What has Jesus done there? He clarifies her apparent statement of opposition to him by telling her about himself. He has become vulnerable. He has given her information about who he is. He has living water. That's something that is transparent. It's something that can advance. Because we could be rejected. That's why we don't like to be transparent in conversations, because we don't want to be rejected. So Jesus puts himself on the line, and she says, sir, you don't even have a bucket to draw with, and this well's deep, so how are you going to get this living water? Are you a better man than our ancestor Jacob, who dug this well and drank from it, he and his sons and livestock, and passed it down to us, not to you? So she is willing to talk to Jesus. By him becoming transparent and putting himself on the line, that usually starts breaking down barriers where we can have a true conversation. By being willing to listen. So she's willing to talk, he's willing to listen, because he put himself out there. She's actually searching for answers in her life. Jesus already knows that, but he's giving her the respect to be able to have a conversation with her and to listen to her. So Jesus goes on, everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again and again. Anyone who drinks the water I give will never thirst, not ever. The water I give you will be an artesian spring within, gushing fountains of endless life. So now Jesus has put himself way out there on the line. It'd be kind of like being in a gathering and just saying, and I'm not saying which side I support or not, but let's say you've got a Biden supporter and a Trump supporter, and somebody said, I just love Trump. Think he's the best president we ever had. He was cheated out of the second term. And you're thinking, wow, this is shutting down conversation. You got the guy that loves Biden, fights back. You could have this kind of dynamic. But Jesus isn't doing it to say, this is that I'm the best. He's saying this is just who I am. And it's very risky for him personally, but this is what listening is all about. So the woman goes on, sir, give me this water so I won't ever get thirsty. It sounds good. Won't ever have to come back to this well again. She now clarifies, see, her intentions. Based upon this active listening that Jesus has been doing. Jesus has stuck with her in this conversation. He's stayed emotionally present with her to get to this point. He's demonstrated that he is safe because he's listening. He says, go call your husband then and come back. See, Jesus has earned the right to probe a little deeper by getting to this point. Often, I'd be afraid to do that. I'd be afraid because I want her to like me. And I want everybody to like me, one of my problems. And so, it's hard to have tough conversations where you know you might alienate somebody. But he was willing to do that because he cared about her. So, now if she chooses to walk away from the conversation, she's not just refusing to interact on a superficial getting water level, she's refusing him. This is risky for Jesus personally, but this, again, is what listening is all about. So the woman says, sir, give me this water so I won't ever get thirsty. Excuse me, I just read that. So she then says, I have no husband. Well, that's true. She's not willing to disclose her personal life yet. I think Jesus is looking at her. He's not just listening to her words, he's looking at her. You know, the words that we say are only 7% of the conversation. We're only, of what we're saying, it's only 7%. 93% is through my body language. I'm doing this and I'm kind of stepping back. I'm looking around. I'm telling you something. So he's reading her body language. We can't see that. We only have the words. But I believe he's reading her body language, her tone of voice, how she says things, to know that she is open to going on a journey. So he probes deeper. And when she tells him she has no husband, not willing to disclose things, Jesus says, that's nicely put. You're right, that you have no husband. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you're living with now isn't even your husband. So you spoke the truth. But it's not really all the truth, is it? So Jesus is letting her know he knows this, and he still cares about her. He hasn't judged her. He's stuck with this conversation, and he's letting her know that he still loves and cares for her. A desire for truth always includes a desire to know God's boundaries in my life, and a willingness to be held accountable to those boundaries. Let me say that again. A desire for truth a true desire to understand one another. Always includes a desire to know God's boundaries for my life. Not for your life, for my life. And a willingness to be held accountable to those boundaries. And I interact within that framework. So, once Jesus takes this conversation deeper, he's really asking her to share it herself. So I know you've had a troubled life. And I can't even imagine what that would be like. Can't imagine what you've been through, how you were raised, or whatever the baggage is that you have. Goodness. I think when I talk to people, I try to keep this attitude that if I had gone through what they had gone through, at best, I'd be where they are, and I'd probably be worse off. Puts it in a different perspective when they start listening that way. So the woman says, "Oh, so you're a prophet. Well, tell me this. Our ancestors worship God at this mountain." See, she's getting religious now. We do that ourselves. Well, let's get into the doctrines, I mean, we had 28 of them. And this is truth here. So let's stick with that. It's much easier to debate a doctrine than it is to love a person. When I was a young man, I often thought my mother was a prophet. She could tell me what I had done. And one time I had a curfew, and I was late for the curfew. And I knew I was late, so I was speeding home. And I got pulled over by the policeman. Well, my dad's a firefighter, and he actually knew who my dad was, so he let me off. But when I got home at 12:05 a.m., my mother said, "So you got pulled over by the cops," because she has this radio that she listens to. And I said, "Yeah, but they knew Dad, so I'm okay." But she would bluff me. She'd really bluff it a lot of times. But she was right most of the time, so I actually thought she knew what I was doing, but she didn't. She just was kind of figuring that I had done X, Y, and Z. So Jesus demonstrated in this story here real love and caring, real safety to this woman, I believe through his tone of voice, through his body language, his mannerisms. So he was earning the right to help her clarify her own misbeliefs. See, the misbeliefs that really get us in trouble are the misbeliefs we have about ourselves. And we get into a lot of trouble with that. So now she's ready for further clarification. So Jesus says, "Believe me, the time is coming when you Samaritans will worship the Father, neither here at this mountain nor there in Jerusalem." We're all doing the best we can. Jews and Samaritans, we're all on a journey, and God's intention is to save everyone who seeks after him. Come when what you're called will not matter, and where you go to worship will not matter. It's who you are and the way you live that count before God. Your worship must engage your spirit in the pursuit of truth. That's the kind of people the Father is for, those who are simply and honestly themselves before him in their worship, those who worship him just to do it out of their very being, their spirits, their true selves, in adoration. Jesus puts it on the line and offers her an invitation by doing so. So she says, "I don't know about that. I do know the Messiah is coming, and when he arrives, we'll get the whole story." In other words, tell me more. Tell me more. See, it doesn't take years to get down to the core of things. It takes an attitude. Listen to what somebody's saying. Jesus then says, I am he. You don't have to wait any longer or look any further. Consider the communication levels. There's 5 communication levels. The one is cliche. It's really non-sharing, not sharing anything about who I am. I'm not going to even share with what my religious or political or views are, or my needs or my wants. I'm not going to give you anything like that. That's cliche. It's just non-sharing. In fact, that's sharing what you know. And the best one we have is we can talk about weather factually pretty easily. We do that. Yeah, it's pretty hot out there today. Well, that snow is really tough. You know, well, we can talk about that. How many inches was that? 2? Well, I thought it was 4. Well, that's okay. Well, it was a lot for me. You know, and so that's the fact sharing, and it's non-threatening. The next is opinion, sharing what you think. Becomes a little more risky to start giving you my opinions on any topic. And so the next one, the next level is emotion, sharing what you feel. When you start sharing your feelings, it's getting more risky. So my opinions are one thing, getting to emotion is something else. And then there are those conversations where we can get to the highest level of communication, and that's transparency. Really who I am. And it's astonishing at how quickly Jesus was able to get to transparency. The less we have to hide, at least what we think we need to hide, the less transparent we can be. And so we need to deal with those issues that prevent us from being transparent. I need to be transparent with myself before I can be transparent with my spouse. And I probably need to be transparent with my spouse before I can start being transparent with other people. And being transparent with our kids can be difficult. It can be difficult. My oldest daughter, Sally, she's a police officer today. She's a special ed teacher for years, and then now is a police officer. And just listening to her stories, there is a study that came out recently, and I think that women officers, police officers, have 60% less confrontation. Mm-hmm. So much less likely to shoot somebody or whatever. And I listened to Sally's stories. I go, well, I can see if that's true. Because she's curious. She engages. Sometimes they tell her things that she didn't want them to tell her because now she has to arrest him. Yeah. You told me that? Well, now I'm going to have to arrest you. And that's the way she'll do it, too. Let me educate you. Next time, you shouldn't say these things. If you want to go, because I could let you go, but now I can't. So it's getting to that transparency level where we know who we are, and being able to be transparent. So with our kids. And so Sally, she was, tell you what she is today, but what she was when I just sold my practice, went to Richland, Washington to pastor in 2004. She graduated from Southern at the end of that year, and she came home to live with us for a while. We'd been living in Illinois, and now we're in Washington State. My son will be a freshman at Walla Walla that year, and so it seemed like a good time, and it was a great fit that way. Our other daughter stayed in Chicago, and so Sally comes out and lives with us, and feels pretty broken to me, just based on the guy she dates. I mean, when your daughter brings a guy to your house, and he has a breathalyzer on his car because it's court ordered, and he can't start the car until he breathes in there and there's no alcohol in his breath. You think, well, this isn't the guy I was thinking that Sally would be with. And she and I had been running since her junior year. Because her junior year of high school, she wanted to run a marathon her senior year. And she said, Dad, I'm going to do it with you. So Sally and I bonded over running. We've done 10 marathons together. We've long runs, you start talking about things. And what I would notice is that now that I'm a pastor, we did marathons out here too. And we'd be running, and when I was getting too heated over what she was doing, and she wasn't abiding by my counsel because I wasn't taking the counsel that I'm talking about today. So I've lived through this, I understand. And she would just pick up the pace because then Dad couldn't talk. But it was years later. She's going through healing with whatever had caused her problems in how she was interacting with the people in her life and the choices she was making. And I had been on a journey, and I went to her and we had a long conversation, and I said, I'm sorry. I didn't say it this way, but I never stayed curious in your life. Never loved you enough to respect what your thoughts are. I was preaching at you this whole time. And those are tough conversations to have. But without that conversation, I don't think Sally and I had the same relationship as we have today. And that's not just one conversation. That was over the course of weeks and months. And to the point, I got to the point where if you love this guy, I promise I will learn to love him. And I will always accept him in this house, no matter what I think of him. And through that whole journey, she has called off 2 weddings, one 2 weeks before, the next one 2 months before. The one 2 months before, I'm digressing here. I don't know what, I need to close up here, but the one 2 weeks before, we'd gone down to Loma Linda. My nephew was getting married, and my wife couldn't go, and Sally went with me. And we spent some time on the beach at a friend's house of mine, and around Laguna, one of my favorite places. And we'd had a good time. We went to the wedding, and during the wedding, my nephew is a cyclist. I mean, he's a really good, like a semi-pro type cyclist. And he, the pastor said, when I go cycling with you, Jeff, you tell stories, you've told stories about this girlfriend and that girlfriend, and you always say, I think I'm settling, so I'm going to break up with her. But you never said that about Ray, his current wife. So we're on the flight home, sitting next to me, and she said, Dad, I'm going to break up. I'm going to break up with Rusty. I said, wow, man, I just hope that I haven't influenced you unduly, like putting pressure on you, because she knew He's definitely not the worst guy she's ever dated, but didn't think he was the one for her. But who am I? So she assured me that that wasn't the case, and it turns out that was not the case. She had come to that on her own conclusion. And she's where she is today because we could have open conversations. And one conversation without judgment that took me a long time to learn how to do that. So let me just skip down here. We only have a few more minutes. One of the things that we need to be good listeners is safe. We need to be a safe person. And I wasn't always safe with Sally. Jesus is safe. He wants to be your friend. He wants to use me to be your friend. And he wants to use you to be my friend. But what does it mean to be safe? I could give you all the text that I would put with this, but I'm just going to go through this list. A person who's safe admits weaknesses rather than act like they have it all together. You could say transparency, but they admit their weaknesses. Number two, they're spiritual rather than religious. And I could unpack that a little bit more. Look at the spiritual practices of Jesus. He went away to pray by himself. In multiple texts on that. At least 3 in Mark, Luke, and 2 in Luke and 1 in Mark, where completely different circumstances, he gets away to pray. Open to feedback rather than defensive. Am I open to hear what you have to say, your thoughts about me? Humble rather than self-righteous. Change my behavior rather than only apologize. Oh, I'm sorry for that. Then I do it again the next day. But think about when I apologize, what I need to do to change. Deal with problems rather than avoid them. Earn trust, not demand it. Now, I am a proponent of giving trust freely. I don't believe I need to earn your trust for me to trust you. That works out 95% of the time. 5% of the time you can get burned. The times I get burned, and I had one just recently, I'll stand on my reputation. You want to tell your story? That's fine. But I will stand on my reputation. So I give trust freely, but I certainly don't demand that they trust me. Admit my faults rather than believing that I'm perfect. Take responsibility for my actions rather than blaming others. We can always come up with a reason why we did something that we're ashamed of. Tell the truth rather than lie. And grow. Grow rather than stay stagnant. I'm going to close with 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, but I'm going to substitute. We're not going to use the word love, we're going to use the word listen. I may be able to speak the languages of human beings and even of angels, but if I don't listen, my speech is no more than a noisy gong or a clanging bell. I may have the gift of inspired preaching. I may have all the knowledge and understand all secrets. I may have all the faith needed to move mountains. But if I don't listen, I'm nothing. I may give away everything I have and even give my body to be burned, but if I do not listen, it does me no good. Listening is patient and kind. It's not jealous or conceited or proud. Listening is not ill-mannered or selfish or irritable. Listening does not keep a record of wrongs. Listening is not happy with evil, but is happy with the truth. Listening never gives up. And it's faith, hope, and patience.